Well, yes, it's another cat video, and the cat video is going to be quick. Not as quick as Itty Bit. It's going to be essay thematic overview. Yes, the essay is going to be over theme of at least the first readings of each. Yeah, here we go. Next. So, because this comes straight out of the AP, because the AP says literary style and genre. What would we expect from an epic or a commentary? Caesar wrote the book on commentaries. Actually, Xenophon, Xenophon, did in his The March of 10,000. If you want to think of it as a literary genre, we deal with geography, we deal with ethnography, we deal with chronology, we deal with causation, we deal with characterization, indirect speech, and actions of the principal player. So let's take a look at the first part of it, which is, of course, what? Geography. Remember, these are warrants you can only use once. So therefore, when we look at the geography, pull out the river stuff. Pull out rivers, orientation, right? So like in the east, the west. Also talk about the ocean, the borders of it. Those are going to be important for a commentary. Also, besides the geography, we need to talk about the ethnography, the people, the references you could have. All of these differ in languages, institutions, and laws amongst themselves. So that's a pretty good one. But what do we also? Oh, and the strongest of these are the Belgians, but don't use that too much except for causation, because Caesar gives a rationale of why it's that way. He says, because they are what? Because they are farthest from the culture and the humanity of the province, and merchants go least often to them and carry in those things which go towards the effeminizing of the spirit. And then we go a little farther. Characterization. There's really no characterization in the first chapter, but you will see, and you should reference this, the characterization you see of Orgetorix in the next two chapters. Indirect speech, not found here, but where is it found? Next two chapters. And finally, introduction of the main player, found later, chapter 7. So you're going to be having to comment on the text that you see, and it may not be this text, it may be more, but also know beyond that. So, what do we expect in terms of epic from Virgil? Well, first off, we have to realize all epics are built in dactylic hexameter. Invocation of the Muse, synopsis of the story, hamartia, introduction of the protagonist, introduction of the antagonist, and a focus on fate. So let's take the Iliad. We have Sing, O Goddess. There's the invocation of the Muse. It's already in dactylic hexameter. We have here the green part, the introduction of the protagonist, Achilles. We have the story, the fatal anger that occurred. We have here also the hamartia, but it's not Achilles' hamartia. It's Agamemnon's, who's the jackass king. We also have the antagonist, which is going to be Apollo, causing the problem among the Greeks. The Odyssey proem is even more complex and rather straightforward, though. Tell me, O Muse, invocation of the Muse, invocation of the goddess, dactylic hexameter. Tell me where you will, because when we talk about singing and sing, O Muse, we're talking about prophetic utterance. We have the green talking about the protagonist, the man of many resources, godlike Achilles. We have the story who wandered far and wide. This is like the abstract of the entire work. We have the hamartia. His hamartia is the unwiseness of eating the cattle of the sun. There's also other hamartia for Odysseus. We also have the antagonists, the sun god, Calypso, and of course Poseidon. So this is what Virgil had to play with when he built the Aeneid, using the first six books based on the wanderings of Odysseus, the Odyssey, and the last six books dealing with war. So obviously written in dactylic hexameter. Obviously you have the invocation of the Muse. I sing, tell me, O Muse. You also have what? Synopsis of the story came to Lavinian shores, having been tossed much upon the sea and on the lands. He talks about building a city. He talks about carrying the gods to Latium, from whence comes the Latin race, the Alban fathers, and the walls of not of high Rome, not the high walls of Rome, but the walls of high Rome, having undergone so many disasters to go through so many fortunes. We also see the hamartia or tragic flaw. Unlike the Iliad, the hamartia or tragic flaw does not arise with the protagonist. It arises with the god, violence of the gods, on account of the savage remembering anger that causes the harmed Numen, the suffering what, and so many angers, anger, anger, anger. Then we also have introduction of the protagonist, but unlike the Odyssey, unlike the Iliad, uh, Virgil waits a while. He waits a while to talk about Aeneas by name. We all know that he's the man who came first from Troy, from the borders of Troy to Italy. We know he suffered much in war. And most importantly, he's got a man noted by piety. That by piety, pietas, is important for his character. And then, of course, introduction of the antagonist, Juno, 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 angry Juno, queen of the gods, celestial spirits. Focus on fate clearly in the second line, but you'll see it throughout the first 30 lines, the first 40 lines. You'll see it throughout everywhere, actually, the concept of fates. And then finally, that's the big stuff. So therefore, be able to comment on these fully. Now, when you comment on your passage, see what the colors show. The colors show I've used the entire passage, virtually the entire passage. When you give me warrants, make sure you have the claim, the warrant, and the so what, proving how the warrant proved your claim. All right, well, that takes care of everything. The test will be the third part of the exam. And Itty Bit, come here, you got to say goodbye. All right, so make sure you've taken care of the readings and you can comment fully. We're talking 5 to 6 pages, especially why? Because you know what the topic's going to be on. Take care, 5 to 6 pages. I'll be looking forward to it.